What's up, guys?
Hello.
Hey, sir.
All right, I'm getting the live stream configured.
Chris, I figure this will be much the same that we did in the podcast episode.
Sure.
Justin, did you need anything from me other than just getting it launched?
No. Yeah. No, the only other thing is I'll have it up on my iPad just so I can see if anything comes in. But in the past, with all the past sessions, if you when Vanessa was here, but if you see any questions come through on LinkedIn, it's just super helpful to throw them in the chat.
Yeah, I've got a call. I got back-to-back calls, but I will try and monitor that on the side and throw stuff over if I can.
Okay, and like I said, I'll have it up on my iPad so I can kind of keep an eye on it. But yeah,
we just have one more week before we've got our replacement for Vanessa, and so thanks for bearing with me while we try and juggle and cover.
No. Lots of changes around there.
Yep, all for the better, I hope. There was a reason why I was brought in, so.
Oh yeah, there always is. Are you like coding something while you're sitting here, Chris?
Yeah, I'm trying to get some stuff ready for a keynote I'm delivering on Thursday.
I always know. You're never just sitting there reading something.
No, I'm talking to the Society for Marketing and Professional Services, which is a company that they basically market to architecture and engineering companies.
How was Belgrade?
Interesting. It was a very interesting place. In some ways, very cool, very modern. Other ways, it's still Yugoslavia, like the former state of Yugoslavia. You can still see the effects of the war. There are still a fair number of buildings have not been repaired or not been repaired fully, which is always was a bit eye opening. And the thing that the only thing that really bugged me was the air quality. So I have a travel health insurance app, and it, wherever you go, it says like, hey, here's the things you need to know today. And every single day, like, air quality hazardous, wear a mask. Like, I was wearing a mask outdoors more than I was indoors. And everybody smokes all the time, everywhere. In hotels, in restaurants, in everywhere. Without exception. Like, I basically ate in my hotel room because every single restaurant was just a cloud of smog. Yeah, it was something. And then the other thing was like the air quality is there so bad because like 75% of the homes still heat their homes just with raw coal, like right out of like Charles Dickens, like just shoveling coal into the fireplace. And so like the whole time, like all my photos for there was like just this grayish yellow haze over the entire city. I'm like, oh, look at the fog. Like that's not fog.
That's pollution. That's literally straight pollution.
Exactly. So when I haven't had to change my filters on my P100s for like months. And when I got home, I actually had to change all the filters because they were like a light gray color.
Wasn't that are we live now?
No,
Jason?
no, it's just
okay. I just saw it pop up. Wasn't that, if I remember right, Chris, you had taken a picture or something saying that was like the cleanest airport or the cleanest
Oh, that was Munich.
Munich. Yeah.
That does
I
not
went.
surprise me at all.
No. So I went bounced through Munich on the way there and bounced through Frankfurt on the way back. Frankfurt was interesting. Frankfurt was a lot like Newark Airport, if you could imagine Newark Airport but clean. Same busyness, same dense hallways and crowded but clean.
Yeah, Newark. I stopped trying to fly through. Like we used to when we lived in California, would come back. We'd fly the first handful of times, whatever, 8-10 times we flew into Newark, and then I was like, no,
Yeah,
I've had enough. I don't like kind of driving out of anywheres in the tri-state area. Newark's too busy.
I just noticed it looks like Vanessa shared her link with you. Do you want to go in and update your name?
For me? Oh,
for me.
Yes, Chris is currently Vanessa.
Do you know where to go to do that?
No.
If you'll click participants down at the bottom.
Yep.
And then next to your name, there's more with a drop down.
Ah. There we go. Much better. I feel 100% less like Vanessa now.
That's a good thing for a lot of reasons.
I'm guessing at least she was Asian, so got that right.
At least you were similar that way.
I mean, I'm guessing she's also Vietnamese based on the last name, so not quite the same nationality.
It wasn't Vietnamese, but it was Southeast Asian. I can't remember where.
Well, your choices are Laos, Thailand, Cambodia.
I can't remember. Actually, it might have been Philippines.
Okay.
I had gone to when I was at Citrix, I'd gone on like this whirlwind trip of London, Munich, and Paris, all within a week. It sucked. But it was like 18 hours in every city. But Munich was cool. Like,
yeah.
But when you walk down the main street, like, where essentially the Capitol building or whatever they call it, but you walk down that main street, kind of to your point, it's not the same level of destruction, but like our country manager there was pointing out, like, you could still see the holes out of buildings or destruction of the side of a building. It's still rebuilt or whatever because it's all brick and stone and whatever, but could see where the bombs hit the walls during the World War and stuff like that.
Yep.
All right. You guys about ready?
Yep.
All right. Let's do it. All right, we're going live on LinkedIn.
Yep. I'm just watching it. Just let me know if you see it on your end, Jason, because it's still showing, at least through my iPad, that it's not live.
Yep, checking now. All right, should be good.
Okay, there we go. Thank you everyone for joining today for our discussion on dark social, private communities, and all of that good stuff. My apologies if you saw us kind of looking around and what have you. We're just making sure that we are live here for you. So today I'm joined by Christopher Penn. I'm Justin Levy, Director of Social and Influencer Marketing at Demandbase. I'll let Chris give his little intro because I will screw it up whenever I try to give it about him.
Sure. My name is Christopher Penn. I'm the Chief Data Scientist of TrustInsights.ai. We are a management consulting firm, and happy to be here and talk all things private social, dark social and stuff, a topic that, gosh, we've been talking about now for probably close to 10 years in some fashion.
Well, isn't that the case with kind of everything, right? You know, influencer marketing is new, but it's 10 years old. Social media is 15 years old, but we're still talking about, you know, why companies need to be on social. So one of the things that, you know, I thought would be interesting for us to talk about, you know, Rev Genius is a Slack-based community. So it's actually a perfect kind of conversation to have. So something that you and I have had conversations about in the past is, are private communities, say Slack or Discord, synonymous with dark social? Is it a subset of that? You know, how do you view that, or what is your feedback when it comes to that?
Sure. So dark social is any social media channel where we marketers don't get information, right? We get no attribution data from traffic coming from it. We have no idea where people are coming from or where these conversations are happening. So there's sort of 3 levels of social media, right? There's public social, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok, and so on and so forth. The smoldering ruin that used to be Twitter. Then there's private. I mean, we'll touch on that, I'm sure, at some point. And then you have fully private social media. This is group chat, direct messages, text messages, SMS, things which are private, one-to-one, maybe many-to-one, maybe to one-to-many, but it's totally hidden away. And then there's what we call velvet rope communities. These are places like Slack, Discord, Telegram, Patreon, Gumroad, Substack, OnlyFans, you name it, where there's people can find their way in from the public, but it's still not searchable. We're still not getting marketing data from it. What the private and the velvet rope communities have in common is there is no attribution data. So if you're in the Rev Genius Slack or the Analytics for Marketers Slack, and I share a link, unless I slap tracking codes on that link, when people click on that, I, as a marketer, will have no idea where this traffic is coming from. That's what we call dark social. We have no idea what's generating this traffic, but we're pretty sure it's coming from social media. So private social media communities and velvet rope communities are a subset of dark social.
So you brought up the kind of measurement of it. You know, you could use tracked links. One of the things you see talked about a lot in these communities, these private communities, or even publicly, you know, you see people that are really into this, and on LinkedIn, they might bring this up, is that self-attribution is the king of them all for measurement, right? But how does that scale within an organization? That might be good for a 50 or 50 person company or 150, something like that. But as you get up into that 1,000, 5,000, 10,000 person company, how does that measurement, if even we only focus on private communities, actually scale?
It depends. It depends on how many of those people within that organization are participating, right? If you are IBM and you have 400,000 employees, all 400,000 employees are not going to be in a Slack channel, right? You're maybe going to have a couple of dozen on any given topic, because someone who is a specialist in IBM Z mainframes probably is not going to show up in the Watson Voice Services channel, right? There's just no reason for them to be there. Attribution, self-attribution in particular, is something that companies are deficient in anyway. I mean, there's companies in general are deficient at attribution all across the board, and it's getting harder to do that because a lot of tracking services are being somewhat blinded in some ways by increased privacy restrictions. So self-attribution certainly does help. There are plenty of systems and softwares and tools that can help people share links, employee advocacy tools that automatically do the tagging and things, make that a little bit easier. And that's a good place to start. Encouraging people to use attribution as a way of saying, like, hey, here's the reason we should be using this stuff. If you want to continue to participate in these communities on company time, we need to know it's having some kind of impact, and therefore please use these tracking links. But the other thing that's really important with these communities and with attribution in general is getting people to realize that measurement of attribution it's more complicated than it at first looks. You can and should be building attribution models that incorporate things like market research, that incorporate things like brand strength, share of branded search, and so on and so forth, so that you understand how all of your efforts correlate to the business outcomes you care about. And then you build a testing plan that says, okay, well, if we have a correlation, let's now go ahead and try to prove causation by saying that these channels or these communities seem to be working best for us. If we double our efforts and participation and resources and people, do we see a commensurate doubling in prospects or leads or whatever generated from those communities in general? With dark social, one of the challenges is you have to do this kind of more sophisticated attribution modeling that takes into account hidden effects, because you don't have the data. By definition, you don't have the attribution data. And if you don't have that capability, then you're going to dramatically underestimate the value of dark social.
The main topic, right, the title of this is how to know if dark social is right for your marketing strategy. So I guess this can be posed to you in two ways, right? Because you've done a lot of research in these private velvet rope communities. That is what RevGenius is. By alone, it's for 35,000 plus people. So kind of at the upper level, how do you know if dark social is right for your marketing strategy? But secondarily, how do you know if private communities are right for your marketing strategy?
Dark social is tricky because so much of it is literally invisible. You don't get a choice whether or not it's right for you, right? It's the same as we've said with social media in general. You don't get a choice. People will have conversations about your products and brands and services and company with or without you. Your choice is, do you want to be a participant in those conversations, or do you just want to be the roadkill that gets run over by the conversation? Anytime you have people gathering around a common interest of some kind, you're going to get conversations about your company. If your company has any brand strength whatsoever. Now, if you're a brand new startup or you have no brand strength, then yeah, you probably won't be involved in those conversations. But you've also probably got bigger problems if you have no brand. If you've got a brand that people recognize, then those conversations are going to be happening. And the biggest thing to look for in your own digital marketing analytics in particular is looking at what percentage of unattributed traffic do you have. So for example, in Google Analytics 4, they'll in the channel groupings, they'll be classified as unassigned. Like Google's like, I don't know what to do with this, but here's a bunch of traffic. We don't know where it's coming from. And you can see, like, okay, I want to look at this segment and say, does this unassigned traffic convert at all? If the answer is no, then you don't have a dark social problem, right? Because you got this traffic that's not converting, don't worry about it. If, on the other hand, that traffic is converting, you're like, I wonder where it's coming from. A big part of attribution, if you want to do it well, is to collect that information at point of contact on your web form. How did you hear about us, right? And if Slack and or other whatever communities are active in your industry is not in that list of in that drop down, or it's a free form text field, then you're missing the opportunity to collect a whole bunch of data. I'm a big fan of the free form text field. Just let people say, how did you find us? And you can clean that up with some data processing afterwards. And that goes into your calculations to say, if, for example, if you're working in B2B and, the Rev Genius Slack community is never once mentioned in your form. So like, okay, it's probably not, a huge point of conversation. On the other hand, if it's 1, 2, 3, 5, 7, 10% of prospects are saying, oh, I heard about you. I read that post in Rev Genius, or I read that post in the What Am I Working On channel in Analytics for Marketers. Then, okay, this is clearly, there's a there. And it's at that point where you can go to a stakeholder and say, when they say, well, what's the value of all this? I say, well, do you want 7% less leads? And they would probably say, no, we like leads. And say, that's where this is coming from. That's how I would approach the overall measurement question for all dark social. And then again, that applies, you just extend that into private social media communities, velvet rope communities, to say, does Analytics for Marketers or the Tilt or whatever, whichever communities you're in, are these communities in particular working for you? And you'll get that same answer from that fill in the field. When somebody calls up and your salesperson, your AE answers the phone, one of the questions on the punch list, on their clipboard, they have all their lists. Okay. Oh yeah. Question 7. What made you call in today? Right? How did you hear about us? Things like that. And if the answer is this Slack community or that Slack community, then you've got it's working for you. It's attribution like this is not rocket surgery, right? It is effort. And that's the challenge that a lot of companies seem to not be super willing to invest the effort into making this happen.
It's really easy. It's easy to know, but people don't want to do the, in a way, heavy lift to make sure that self-attribution kind of easy to understand. Don't want to make the lift to go figure it all out on the back end.
Exactly. Here's the thing. It drives me up a wall when anyone says something in marketing is unmeasurable. Everything in marketing is measurable. Everything. The question is whether you are willing to invest in it to measure it, and whether it, the cost of measuring it is worth the value you're going to get out of it, right? But everything is measurable with enough surveying, focus groups, one-on-one interviews, customer shadowing, market research, polls, surveys, you name it. There are so many instruments you can measure things with. It's just people are unwilling or unable to invest the time, the money, and the people to do it.
You recently conducted a lot of research. You produced a white paper, which I encourage everyone to go download. We'll post it in the comments here afterwards, because it would take a little while for me to go find the link and post it. But you conducted research into these velvet rope communities. What was the biggest surprise, I guess, for you that came out of it? I know you went and you imported a bunch of data and really looked at it. Was there a big surprise that came out of it for you, or aha moment?
I don't know if that was a surprise, but the scale at which private social media communities are growing, it was in some ways reassuring. For example, we surveyed Americans 18 up, and 9.2% of Americans use Discord once a week or more. For context, of the 18 plus population in the USA, that is 24 million people, right? 24 million people in the USA, 18 and up, use Discord once a week or more. Slack is 15.5 million, right? When you think about, everyone and their cousins talking about Mastodon right now, which is, sort of a Twitter alternative, that's got like 6 million users. So you have something like Discord that's 4 times the size of it, that people are using once a week or more, not, just ever, like once a week or more, that people spend their time. Podcasts are 74 million people once a week or more. So if you think about it, Discord is approximately a third of the weekly podcast listening audience. So if you're investing now in podcasts, these private social media communities might be worth investing your time in, because there's a lot of people there. Now, the challenge for a lot of marketers is to, again, you have to do some market research. Where is your audience, right? Where are they spending their time now? If you're in B2B and your audience is over 35, there's probably a pretty good chance your audience is going to be more on Slack than Discord. If your audience is under 35, better chance your audience is going to be on Discord. Are you international, right? Do you operate in places like India? Chances are Telegram is going to be one of the places to be looking at. So you've got to look around all these different communities and see, where do people spend their time, and be open to unconventional answers, right? Substack just opened group chat for its email newsletter. So if you have an email newsletter through Substack, you can now have a private group chat about each issue of your newsletter. That's was a really cool thing. On the other hand, if you were on reviews getting shut down by the end of the year. So expect to be on Substack. But Substack offering private social media, essentially a chat room for email subscribers, is yet another place where marketing can't see what's going on, right? It's yet another dark social place that is out of our visibility.
Now, you live on both the side of as a community manager, because you run your own Slack group, and obviously you're on the other side as a community member in both Slack and Discord based communities. What would your tips be? We'll go to both of these, but what would your tips be for those folks on here that are either currently managing their own community, or maybe thinking about starting their own community, whether it's on Slack or Discord? Because I know there are unique features to them, but what would your advice be based on your ownership of your group?
So I actually moderate some communities on Discord too. There's a few different layers. First, every community needs rules. Every community needs a code of conduct of some kind that emphasizes what people are allowed to do or not allowed to do. Because otherwise, people will be people, marketers will be marketers and just like start spamming everybody. And you don't want that to happen. So you have to be very clear, like what the rules are. In the analytics for marketers community, we have a set of I think 10 or 11 rules, all of which basically boil down to don't be a jerk. But there's some very clear behaviors we've outlined to say yeah, this is not allowed. This is not allowed. No form of hate speech is permitted in any way, shape, or form. No soliciting of people. You may not direct message people without their consent. You may only promote your stuff in the channel that's intended for promotion. Don't be pimping your stuff otherwise, and so on and so forth. Conduct yourself in a professional manner, because it's a professional community. In one of the Discord communities I maintain, there's a big emphasis on people's privacy. They say you may not share someone else's private information. You're not allowed to. Even if you have that person's permission, you're still not allowed to do it. There's certain behaviors that people are allowed to do or not allowed to do. There's minimum requirements for things like voice chat and video chat. You have to have at least a halfway decent microphone of some kind. It's going to be on voice chat, because nobody wants to listen to someone yelling to their phone across the room. For specific communities, there are some topics that are just flat out disallowed, right? In one Discord group I'm in, there's no politics of any kind, none, zero. It can't come up at all. That's one of those things that people, you have to decide on. So that's the first part, is setting the boundaries and the guidelines. And the second part is a community is a lot like farming. You have to invest a lot of time into it over a long period of time before you start to see any kind of rewards from it. And it requires a lot of very regular, very routine effort. That means stimulating discussions. welcoming new members, running activities. In one group that I'm in, there's sort of like a movie night, like a watch party night, where somebody streams a video. You're like, okay, well, that sounds like a fun, like a book club or something like that. But no, I mean, it can be done. For example, if you are a professional community, you can have watch parties, things like popular TED Talks, and have people be able to tune in at a specific time. You can have again, book clubs. There's a couple of Slack group communities that have a book club, and they have an authors it's not authors night, but it's an authors discussion. Content Marketing Institute runs that, where every month they have an author come in to talk about their book. There are some services that have time limited events. In the Marketing AI Institute, they just had the 31 days of AI, and it's sort of 31 days in a row of interesting questions about artificial intelligence. So having that roster of activities and the people to do it, and the people who can invest time to running it, is important. It's critical. It's not like email marketing where you can just set it, forget it, and just do it and let it do its thing. Because you're dealing with real people in real time, it does require a fair amount of time commitment. I mean, in the beginning of a successful server, you're probably looking at 15, 20, 30 minutes a day. When you get to be a really successful server, where you've got a lot of member interaction and things, you may have a team of 3 or 4 or 5 moderators, and people may be working that as their full-time position. Like, there may be 1 or more people who are dedicated community managers, if you are truly committed to making your community successful.
Now, on the opposite side, everyone that's on here and or will view the archive are Rev Genius has 44,000 or so followers on LinkedIn. Like I said, hover somewhere around, say, 35,000 members within their Slack community. So everyone's a member of that community, maybe others, but at least that. So how do you show up essentially as a community member in some of these? You mentioned that your communities have a set of rules, like don't pimp your stuff outside these these set sections and things of that nature. But how do you show up as an active and helpful, I guess, community member where you provide value? Because being in a community is fine. I mean, you can just be a member, but what could someone on here do, like take away a nugget of information and maybe today or tomorrow go into Rev Genius and be that much better of a contributor?
The first thing is shut up. So I like to think of communities and studying communities like you would if you were an anthropologist, like you were observing a community as an outsider, because everybody who comes in for the first time is an outsider coming in. The first thing you do is shut up. Like, obviously introduce yourself, follow the usual stuff, and then listen, watch, observe. Who's doing the most talking? What are they talking about? Who do people listen to? Who are the de jure leaders, the official moderators and stuff? And then who are the de facto leaders, the people who are super engaged participants? They may not have moderator status or admin status, but they are the ones that are keeping a community really active, with or without the moderators, because it's for them, it's a place to hang out. Who are those people? Who are the influential people? And then once you've gotten a sense of what the community and the culture is about, maybe about 4 to 6 weeks after of observing, then you can start saying, okay, well, what are of all the conversations that I've observed for the last 4 to 6 weeks, which are the ones where I have something that I can legitimately offer a useful viewpoint on, or keep the conversation going? Because not every topic is going to be right for you. There are, like, for example, at Analytics for Marketers, we have dedicated channels. They're called the work-life balance channels. You have things like music and movies and books and stuff like that. Fun stuff that's not necessarily directly work-related. Those are really safe channels for somebody who's new to participate in a discussion, because there's very low risk of saying or doing something wrong. We have a pets channel where you can share photos of your pets, right? That's a giveaway. If you want to get engagement with your fellow community members, here's your favorite pet, whether or not it's yours or not, or like it's a relative's, whatever. There's something there, and then almost in a way, think about buddying up, right? Who are the people that you might want to talk to? If you think about going to a conference, right, and you're at the conference's networking event of some kind, who are the people that you would want to talk to in a real life event? Who are the people you would want to avoid, right? Networking Carl, that guy who's like, always looking over your shoulder to see if there's anyone more important to talk to. And, the moment you try to say something, you just get a business card in the face, like a throwing star, and he's off to, attack the next person. Like, yeah, you don't want to be that guy. And you definitely don't want to hang out with that guy. But in those real life events, there's certainly, how do you find new people to talk to? Well, you listen, you show up at round tables and breakfast discussions and things. And as you hear people talking about stuff that maybe you want to talk about too, you can participate. The thing that is a lesson that I learned from our mutual friend Chris Brogan is that you don't have to have answers at all. You can be a valuable member of a community just by having questions that other people probably are afraid to ask. I remember at this one conference in Toronto, it was a sort of an unconference. It was the PodCamp unconference, and Chris created a session titled, "Can someone please teach me Final Cut Pro?" Right. And so he was the session leader who knew nothing about the software, and other people showed up and, shared their tips and stuff. And by the time everyone was done, we all had a pretty good sense of, oh, well, that's what the software can do, because there were people who were experts, but weren't comfortable leading a session of their own. So you just had this kind of goofy fella show up and say, somebody teach me what I'm doing here. And it worked really well. You can do the same thing in these communities. Like, hey, does somebody know how Google's data-driven attribution model works? Can someone please explain this to me? And people can and will participate in that discussion and say, oh, well, it's this, it uses this math. Here's the academic paper on it. And then you look at it and go, oh, wow, that's, you read through it and go, I don't agree with this at all. And now you've got a discussion that you can have with your fellow community members.
Kind of, in a way, tying this back to dark social, I know it's a piece of dark social, but one of the things that I've done within communities that I'm a member of, including Rep Genius, is to share relevant information besides trying to be helpful. I'm lead influencer marketing by day, so I'll try to provide tips and what have you, talk to people about it. But if your company creates or participates in the development of high level thought leadership content, right? You have the money to pay for studies, or you're partnering with other people, and it's not about your product. For us, we'll go partner with someone, in Demandbase pays for it or sponsors it, but it's not, here's our Demandbase product, and we're not pimping our product, right? The pimped product or information can go into those channels, those direct channels. That's, here, go share this, or we want to give you this. But what I do in a lot of the communities where it might be helpful to give someone some stats or some access to something, that's where I apply some of that measurement to it, right? Yes, everything else has UTM and that fun stuff, but that's where, because it's going directly back to our .com, it's just access to a study that's, I think, will be helpful to them. It has nothing to do with the product or the company. So I try to do that as a member. On the admin side, what you mentioned about listening to what the community wants, we had last week, we had a woman, Katie Ray, who's a community manager for the demand community. She works for meta.io. She had similar feedback. The community is going to tell you what they want, right? You just have to listen to it. And I run a community that's for VPs and above. So you have senior executives within this community. And I ask a question a day, and I know I know you guys do this over in your community as well. And for a long time, I thought, well, if I have senior executives in here in marketing and sales, I should ask them questions that are related to that. Hey, CMOs, what are you seeing for your 2023 budgets? Because maybe this one's helpful to this person or something. I would get crickets. And then one day in your community, we went down a huge rabbit hole about, does pineapple belong on pizza? And it is one of the most divisive freaking arguments ever. You put up a poll on Twitter, I see it in LinkedIn channel, like comments, threads all the time. So I was like, what the hell? And I grabbed that, and the next day, that was the question of the day, and it filled with comments. And I took a step back and I just thought, okay, maybe they deal with the hard, budget and strategy stuff every day. And maybe this is an outlet besides wanting research and access to other people that kind of look like them, right? Similar titles and companies of the same size. But maybe this is their break to be able to answer a fun question. So today I asked, what's your favorite fast casual burger spot? Like Shake Shack, Five Guys, In-N-Out, stuff like that. And the comments have filled with people arguing about which is their favorite and why. But I wouldn't have been able to do that if I didn't listen, if I just tried to continue to inflict my will on the community, as opposed to stepping back and listening to what they were effectively saying. No engagement versus a lot of engagement.
And at the end of the day, they're all just human beings. They're all just people. When you go and hang out at a conference, are you going purely for professional development, or are you going to hang out with people? Right. And if you're going to hang out with people, are you going to talk about work the entire time? Probably not. And just in the same way that you would behave or see people interact at a conference is how to think about a community, right? It is a group of people that are getting together, yes, for a shared purpose, but there's also lots of other purposes that are in there as well. One of the easiest things you can do is have channels for non-work stuff, pets, food, music, things that are relatively common among most people, hobbies, books you're reading, a channel where people can just rant, if people just want to vent their spleen, and you don't have any specific topic prohibitions, just let people rant, and have a self-promotion channel, because the person everybody loves to talk about is themselves. So
especially marketers.
So if you suppress that, okay, but if you give people a sanctioned outlet and that everybody can say, yeah, I'm going to opt out of this channel, I don't want to see it, then the people who want to share stuff do. And you would be surprised. I would say of the people in our Slack community, we have about 3,000 folks in our main community, and we have about 1,000 in the self-promotion channel, right? So if you think about that, a third of folks have willingly stayed in the spam channel, right? So if you give people that outlet, some will make use of it.
Now, I forget this every week. Every week I tell myself I'll remember, but if you have questions for Chris, I know we're about halfway through, make sure you post them in LinkedIn. I am monitoring the chat. That's why you see me looking down every once in a while. To, in a way, pull it back to dark social, to that, I guess, upper level a little bit. Have you been able to track, you have your own community, obviously you're part of all these other ones, and moderate a few more, like you said, on Discord. How have you been able to look at the traffic back to your site, back to Trust Insights, and where appropriate, maybe to your personal website, because you do a lot of writing and content creation there. So have you been able to manage or not manage, look at and assign links and content you're sharing in these communities? And do you have a, I guess, rough percentage that is coming from this activity that you're doing?
We do. We are we're pretty much the only ones that post links to our own website, so it's fairly easy for us to make sure the appropriate tracking links are on things in those channels. We're not famous enough yet or popular enough yet where other people are just sharing our stuff for us. And so because of that, those attribution codes exist on the links shared. We can absolutely see what happens in terms of traffic and conversions. In our most recent multi-touch attribution report that we build, our Slack channel is responsible for about 5.5% of all of our conversions across the board. And that's this is specifically for certain types of form fills. So it works really, really well for us. The challenge for companies with more really complex marketing is that you have to first take your dark traffic and do an analysis of that to figure out what it's from. And the simplest way to do that is to take your dark traffic, take all of your other channels that you've identified, and do a correlation analysis and say, what channel does our dark traffic most closely resemble? Does it look like social? Does it look like email? Does it look like search? And once you've got that nailed down, if it looks like social, then you can start to figure out, okay, is it truly private social, like direct messaging and stuff, or is it velvet rope communities? And again, you can do that analysis. We've been in a position where a good amount of our dark traffic is actually coming from email first before social. So we have a pretty good handle on where our dark traffic comes from, but you need to do that analysis first. You can't just assume that all your dark traffic is coming from one source. It's almost always a blend. The second thing you'll want to do is look at your dark traffic and look at the pages that people visit from that. Because again, if you've got a ton of dark traffic to stuff that you don't necessarily care about, like just the homepage, that's fine. If you got a ton of dark traffic going to things like landing pages, then you may actually have misconfigured ads. And if that's the case, then you need to go fix that. And then the third thing is to look at the mathematical relationship between your dark traffic and branded search, people searching for you by name, partly because of dark search, but also if you're doing a good job with velvet rope communities and things, you should be increasing your brand awareness. And your brand awareness is most easily measured by branded organic search. How many people are searching for Demandbase or RevGenius by name every day, every week, every month? And mathematically, what does that look like from in terms of behavior on different channels? There are different software packages you can use to do that analysis and figure out what's driving our share of mind and what people are searching for. And once you do that, then you can really start to hone in on, okay, these are the channels we need to be better about tracking, make sure we're rigorous about our tracking codes and things like that.
We are 1 week away, as crazy as that is, from the US Thanksgiving, which puts us roughly 6 weeks before the end of the year. Again, as crazy as that is. But as we do come into 2023, I know you are getting a lot of requests for what do next year's predictions look like. So in relation to dark social and where appropriate private communities, what do you think next year looks like for this?
I mean, I didn't have Elon Musk blowing up Twitter for this year on my card. I didn't have Russia attempting to start World War III on my card for this year. Can you believe it's only been since March that A, Russia invaded Ukraine, and B, Russia got its ass handed to it in Ukraine. I saw a comment the other day. Not only is Russia no longer the second largest military in the world, Russia's not the second largest military in Ukraine. So we are, and this is the part that the bone I have to pick with a lot of prediction and trends posts. We are in an era of gigantic uncertainty. We have no idea what's going to happen. I couldn't tell you what's going to happen in a week, much less next year. This time next year, we may be saying, "Hey, remember that Twitter thing? That was fun until it was gone." Or we may be saying, "Hey, Twitter's the best NFT platform for whatever it ends up morphing into." What we do see as happening now is that with all the chaos in social media, Facebook doing 11,000 person people layoffs, Twitter laying off 50% of its staff and 80% of its contractors, every tech company shedding people like crazy. Again, it's instability, and you can be pretty sure that instability is going to continue increasing. There's no sign that it's going to stop. Jay Baer said something recently I thought was really insightful. We now live in a post-factual world where facts and data don't matter to people. Opinion and emotion matter the most. And trends and products and services that serve that mindset will continue to do well. I mean, you have all these new private social, public social platforms that are springing up that serve very specific points of view. And facts don't matter there at all. And that's totally fine, because people have the right to do whatever they want outside of work. But the thing for marketers to pay attention to is it's getting harder and harder and harder to track where people are going and to understand what's happening. If you look at Mastodon, for example, Mastodon went from having like 5 million users to 7 million users in the last 2 weeks because of all the chaos of Twitter. Mastodon's kind of a marketer's nightmare. It's decentralized, right? So it functions like email. Like there is no email company. There's just email servers all over the world. Mastodon is essentially the underlying architecture looks like email. You have Mastodon servers everywhere that operate in this federated network, again, like email, with no ads, no capability to run ads, no data tracking, because every server is its own little community. It's kind of like Discord in that aspect. And wildly varying rules from server to server. You have people flowing like crazy into places like Slack and Discord. Again, 9.5% of people in America on Discord now. But when you look at the number of Discord communities being created month by month, they're in the tens of thousands of new communities with 5, 10, 50, 100, 500 people in them. All of them are out of reach. We know for sure next year, January 1 in California, CPRA goes into effect as a law. This is a new privacy law that impacts any organization that deals in more than 50,000 contacts worth of information, which is pretty much every B2B company ever, right? You can no longer sell or share data without explicit consent from the user, which means the days of of just slipping your registration list to somebody else. You used to be able to say under CCPA, well, we didn't pay for money for that. Like, well, yeah, you can't even share it. And so this paints a picture for marketing that's particularly ugly, which is unless you have invested in your own community, your ability to reach other people is getting smaller and smaller by day, right? Think about it as third-party cookies go away, how are you going to advertise to certain market segments, right? You can't. What you will have to do is adapt to doing contextual marketing, right? If you happen to sell account-based marketing software, then you're going to have to find the content online that people are sharing about that and figure out ways to advertise on that, or identify specific creators and influencers who are creating content that is about that topic and advertise with them. Let them do the hard work of building their audience that's relevant, and then you open up your wallet and you hand them your credit card for that stuff. But the trend is people are flowing away from public social media, and you can't blame them. Public social media is kind of like a dumpster fire with mutant radioactive rats in it, and so going into a Slack community or a Discord community or a Telegram channel or an OnlyFans or a Patreon or a Gumroad or any of these places where everybody has sort of a shared culture is a lot more comfortable. And if you have a choice between, getting in knife fights with trolls on a public channel or taking that same hour and hanging out with people you like in a private channel, you're probably going to pick the private channel. The consequence of this is that it does create much stronger fish bowls, right, of echoed thought. And so the polarization that we see in literally everything in every aspect of life is going to get worse. So again, as marketers, we have to be cognizant and aware of what choices we make in the messaging of our marketing. And you're not going to make everybody happy. So you have to figure out, essentially, can you only piss off the people who are not going to be good ROI? You look at some of the advertising that companies do and some of the social stands that companies take. They're taking their stands because they did their homework. They did their analysis and said, okay, this segment of the audience, we can't afford to piss them off. This segment, we can. So we're going to go to this one because this one looks like it's got more revenue attached to it.
Would, in a way, coming back to the title of this actual session, and looking at the kind of prediction into 2023, though it's always hard because we never, to your point, thought that Elon Musk would purchase Twitter and not know what the hell he was doing. Would you recommend that companies, and I know there's always an asterisk that says it depends, but would you recommend that companies double down or even, go all in with dark social? Because where they can control it, I understand that, they can't control people that are coming in, but a private community or resources to private communities, those areas that they can control. Do you recommend or think that in 2023 companies should lean in more because of the issues with trust and what have you in public social?
100%. Absolutely. There is no place that has more brand safety for your brand than your community that you run, right? It is virtually guaranteed. If you have issues with brand safety in your own community, you've got some serious problems. But also, your email list and your Velvet Rope community are your insurance policies against the biggest challenge marketers have today, and that is somebody else's AI. Right? Somebody else's AI is controlling what news people read, which friends to pay attention to, what gets seen, what gets recommended when somebody searches for something, what people watch, what people listen to. There are AI algorithms that are interfering with that all the time. At no point are you and another human being directly interacting on many of these services because an AI is intermediating that response. In Velvet Rope communities like Slack and Discord, etc., they're chronological. There's nothing interfering with you and the people around you, which means that if you are a brand that is running one of these communities, you can be sure that the people who are there, who do show up, are seeing what you intend them to see when you intend them to see it. This is your insurance policy against other people's algorithms. If you've got a campaign launching, you hit your email list and you message your community and say, hey, this thing's going out, please tell a friend. And that will save you from essentially, an algorithm suppressing something, right? There's nothing quite like launching a community and then seeing comments on your LinkedIn post 3 days later, because that's when the algorithm decided it was going to show your post. Like, well, that's great. Even paid is not a guarantee that, again, you're competing with decreasing amounts of inventory because people are leaving. So if you've got a private social media community, this is your insurance policy. This is your lifeboat. And if you really focus on growing that community, it may become one of the first lines of defense and of benefit to your company. If you do it well, if you invest the time, you invest the money, it can be something that can be your focus group. It can be your market research. It can be your beta testers. It can be your biggest fans and evangelists. And it can be your early warning sign if people aren't happy with you. Now, the challenge that a lot of people, particularly very sensitive people, are going to have to deal with is if you have a community, at certain points, you're going to have to deal with criticism and things that you're doing wrong, right? And you and your stakeholders have to be willing to say, yep, we are open to dealing with criticism, valid criticism, and addressing it in a healthy way, but acknowledging that when you screw up, you're going to pay a price for it in your community. And there are a lot of stakeholders who are not willing to do that, who only want to hear good news. Those people, because you know how much of your PowerPoint reports you have to redact every month to to those people. They are toxic. And if your company is filled with them, a private community is not a good idea, because all you're going to do is piss off your customers and the stakeholders who don't want to hear bad news.
One of the things that we certainly do, I know other companies are doing, as we move into 2023, it can be a recommendation for other companies, however you kind of want to take it, is we do have our own customer community. So to your point, you know, this community that we can talk to our customers, they can give us feedback. We can go into that community, you know, our product marketing folks with product notes or early beta stuff, or get their feedback on all of that, right? And we have a community manager, customer marketing manager. That's basically what she does, besides a few other duties. But also have this sub brand, or this powered by, I always like to say powered by brand, right? You know, so our community revenue circle, we power it. We supply my time and other people's time. We pay for it essentially. It has the people that we want in there as far as the levels of people, but it is not a demand-based company. And I'm actually very strict on the content that I'll allow come from the company in there, and the way it's messaged and things of that nature, because I never want, you know, Mrs. CMO that came in here with one expectation to suddenly get hit with Demandbase trying to sell our wares, or, you know, whatever the case is. So I think in coming into next year, you'll see more companies maybe start to do that. They'll set up these communities that aren't their brand.com/community, right? You know, they'll be like your community. They'll be, you know, what we run, what, like I said, I know Katie Ray over at metadata.io runs. It's not a branded community. It's an off brand of sorts community. So with the 5-ish minutes that we have left or so before I ask you to tell people where they can find you, this has literally nothing to do with dark social or private communities, but it highlights the reason probably why next year people need to look into private communities. This week you wrote about in your newsletter, you wrote about an issue
Eli
that
Lilly.
happened thanks to Elon Musk. So
Yes.
Can you go, for people that don't subscribe and what have you, can you just, because it goes to that brand reputation, it goes to the brand trust, it goes to every reason why brands should consider dark communities, private velvet rope, whatever you want to call it.
So for folks who aren't aware, prior to October 26th, the blue check mark on Twitter meant that someone had verified that account was actually run by essentially the copyright holder. After October 26th, a blue check mark on an account simply means that someone paid $8 a month for Twitter Blue. And what happened last week was that an impersonator account set up a fake account impersonating Eli Lilly and Company with a tweet saying that they would now be making insulin free. This caused quite the ruckus, because it looked like an official account and cost Eli Lilly $15 billion in market capitalization on Friday. Now, knowing the pharmaceutical industry, I'm sure an army of lawyers is on their way to San Francisco right now to have a word with Twitter's management about things like defamation. But it emphasizes that Twitter essentially changed what the brand of the blue check mark means, but user behavior did not necessarily follow it. And you've got this whole raft of fake accounts now leveraging that blue checkmark reputation that's causing all sorts of chaos. I also want to go back to what you're saying earlier about the way brands can power things. That is a time-honored tactic. Think about this. Have you ever been to or eaten in a Michelin-starred restaurant, right? 1, 2, or 3 stars. These are the most prestigious rating a chef can get, and a restaurant can get. That's a tire company, right? A Michelin star is literally the Michelin tire company that made guides for people to drive around America on Michelin tires and find interesting places, right? They powered that. And that is, again, you can take that analogy and extend it to your community. This community is powered by your brand. It doesn't mean you're beating people over the head with it all the time, but it means that people see it and support it. We're heading into Christmas time. Charlie Brown's Christmas special is what now? A time-honored TV show that's 50 years old. Everybody knows it. Vince Guaraldi Trio, and it's jazz music. Where did that come from? Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola bought and produced the Charlie Brown Christmas special, and now it is an institution in culture. Again, powered by this is not new stuff, but when you have a private community, it makes it easier to produce powered by stuff, because you don't then have to convince people first to even be aware of who you are. You can create stuff that's made just for them. And the big lesson that I want people to take away is, as social media fragments, as marketing fragments into these millions of different channels and places, you have to get more specific with your marketing. You cannot create marketing for the public or even the segment or the industry. You have to create marketing specific to each of these little communities. And if you're going to do that anyway, make the place you've put your biggest effort in be the community that you own.
Fantastic. This is amazing information. I love every chance that you and I get to hang out or talk, which is about 400% more over the past month than we have in the past 3 years, because of being able to go back to conferences and whatnot. But where can people find you, find obviously Trust Insights and all that good stuff?
Easiest place to go is trustinsights.ai. That is our company's site. You can find all the other channels and things there. You can find me at CS Penn on most social channels. That is still for now officially me on Twitter. And my personal website's christopherspenn.com. But if you have any questions about the research or you want the paper, go to trustinsights.ai.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Chris. I know right before we jumped on, you were working on a presentation, so you took out the time for everyone that was on here.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Thank you.